from you getting a cup of tea now and me from
Oh,
potentially
right.
a squirrel or a mouse drop in from the
Oh, no. Well, on a day like this, everyone could use a cup of tea,
Yes, absolutely. It is
right?
a
Like, I don't know where people join or typically join from, but where we are, it is, and I was saying, like, it is gloomy here today. Oh,
yeah, it's definitely gloomy. I mean, I'm glad there's not a lot of snow because typically this time of year it's not 9 degrees
yeah.
Celsius. So
Yeah, that's
I'm
true.
grateful for that. But yeah, the typical Canadian discussion always starts with the weather, right?
Of course it does. Because it's
Yeah.
always, I do like, I have to say one positive thing is like, I'm actually looking forward to winter this year. I have a dog, a big, Leslie, a Doberman, and it is so nice. Yes, we do, Stephen, need a cup of sunshine. Yes. I hope my tea delivery will come because so that I can have that. But yeah,
He's in
I'm
Chicago,
looking.
so I don't know what the weather's like in Chicago, but Steve's our cup of sunshine maybe today.
Yeah,
But he
maybe.
lives in Chicago. Yeah.
But yeah, so anyway, oh, no problem for being late. But yeah,
We
what was
started,
it?
Amy. Though we
Oh,
just
Doberman.
started.
I want to walk him in the snow, and I got him a nice jacket. It's like nicer than any jacket that I own for myself, and a
Yeah,
little muff for to keep his ears warm if it gets too cold, like really cold outside. So
and this
yeah.
will be the first winter for Riker, right?
We got him on Boxing Day last
Okay.
year.
Okay.
But it will probably be the first winter he'll actually want to go outside. Last winter he did not like going outside. He was scared to leave the house. So
I find our dog doesn't like to leave when it's raining either. He's kind of a prima donna, so he
yeah.
doesn't like to leave when it's raining. So
Mhm.
you know,
Yeah.
this is time to plan. I'm not seeing all
Yeah.
the
Bob, you're right. It is timed for a vacation.
yeah.
Yes. I need to go but you know what? Again, I'm really looking forward to winter. I think it's going to be a great winter. And I'm looking forward to getting outside when it's like, one thing I love about winter is things aren't as traveled, right? Like there's not as many people outside. You have more space to yourself. So yeah. Anyway,
No,
so
that's very
we should probably get on topic. I'm sorry,
no,
everyone.
I like it. I like catching up with you. I haven't seen you face to face in a little while, so it's
No,
nice.
you haven't. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So, well, okay. So let's get into the nitty gritty, right? So today we are talking about a subject I have not talked about yet. So I'm really excited to talk with you about this. Is onboarding and how to navigate in a post-pandemic workplace. And I know, Amy, that you have been really like doing a lot of webinars and a lot of chats with various experts for First 30 about this very, this very topic about
Mhm.
navigating in a post-pandemic workplace, and also your specialization is onboarding. So I'm going to do a little bio in case anybody doesn't know who you are, because you were my
Sure.
first guest. My first
Yes,
guest as
that's right.
I had two Amy's, my favorite Amy's back to
Oh,
back.
yeah.
So it was you and my friend Amy Riddell were my two first like guinea pigs being interviewed. So you're both on today too. So Amy Davies is the CEO of First 30 Inc., a custom virtual onboarding experience to help employees feel welcome right from the start. And you also run employee engagement surveys and offer innovative, cost-effective, mobile-ready outplacement programs in case, unfortunately, layoffs happen. But right now, well, actually, layoffs aren't necessarily happening now, but there is certainly what is it
Well,
called?
we're in a great, so one thing I wanted to say is actually the employee engagement side of the business is run through Sherry Engel, who is my business partner on onboarding. And she has a business called Loft Consulting. And so we work together, but she leads all of our engagement survey work, which, it's an exciting place to be. But to your point, I mean, it's funny, I started up a business with the outplacement side that I never really wanted anyone to need. I'm glad that when they do need it, though, they come to me because it's very meaningful to people when you help them recover from job loss and get back to work. And I just heard from one of our participants last night that she just got a job. And that is like the best part of my job, is hearing, when people succeed. And but the other side of the business, which we'll be talking about today, is the platform that we have. We work with our clients to put together their onboarding resources, because a lot of them, a lot of companies have trouble putting those together as well. So Sherry and I work together with our clients to do that. And then we put it all together in a platform that is customized to our client, with all of their branding, etc. on it. And it makes onboarding a repeatable process for the organization. And it takes a lot of the pressure off the managers, right? Like, I know we're talking today about, this post-pandemic world where a lot of people are working in a hybrid situation, some people at the office, some people at home. At the best of times, it's difficult for managers to onboard new team members, and this has only made it more difficult, right?
Yeah. And Amy Riddell posted the Great Resignation, which is exactly what sort of this time frame is sort of known for, right? People are like, I don't want to go back working full time. And so, it is kind of this hybrid work environment, which it's beneficial and difficult. Obviously, not everybody wants to commute every day. But I remember, actually, I should just finish introducing
yes, sorry.
Go on with my thought process, because I also want to mention that you're the author of A Spark in the Dark, Illuminating Your Path to a Brilliant Career, which really I still use a lot of your like the things that you included in your book, like imprinting, which we can talk about, is still something that I always think of you. And just the aha of like, nobody is a lifer. Very few people are lifers at a job anymore, that there's just so much movement happening. So, and that wasn't typical for our parents' generation. So your book was really helpful for me to reframe that in my brain too.
It's funny. I wrote it, and it's all about, having a successful career in what I call a reorg world, where we're constantly losing and changing our jobs. And I wrote it pre-COVID. and I always say to people, like I said in the book, you never, ever know what's going to happen. Right. And in the case of people getting laid off because of COVID, that was how unexpected was COVID, right? I'm watching the morning show right now. I don't know if there's any other morning show fans, but they're just sort of starting to cover, like starting to mention COVID, and nobody's taking it seriously in the newsroom. The person who's in, at the heart of it all can't even get on the air to report on it, and he keeps pushing for it. So it's really interesting to think about the fact we just don't know what's coming next. And I always say to people, and I know this is about onboarding and not about changing jobs, but always be reorg ready, like always be ready to take on that job. But anyway, we are seeing a lot of hiring in business. Amy's still on season 1. I know. Oops, I shouldn't have said anything, Amy.
You haven't given away any of the secret sauce, though. So
no, I didn't give away anything. So anyway, on the hiring, it's kind of an exciting time, right? Because companies are starting to kind of normalize after what has happened with the pandemic, and really kind of they're more settled in some ways. I actually think we're going to see more layoffs early next year, because what's happened is companies had some subsidies, they had some benefits, they have sort of figured out what they're going to do. I don't know that that's going to mean we'll have less jobs. I think companies are going to be really honest with themselves to say, like they're going to have to look at their employees and ask, do they have the right positions filled to go move on to kind of normalize now. And they probably hired people to just get them through the pandemic too, right? To kind of had skills that they needed at that time, that those might not be long-term. So we are going to see a lot of hiring and a lot of need to get these onboarding processes right. And it is more difficult when you have a mix of people coming into the office and at home. And I think that's why we have to really be thoughtful about how we do onboard people when they come into our workplace, because you mentioned imprinting. And imprinting is a cognitive, there's this cognitive effect when we meet people for the first time. Leslie, I always smile when I think about you and I meeting for the first time. It was, in the second time, we had such a great rapport right away, and you imprinted very positively. When you go to a restaurant for the first time, that's going to be an imprinting experience. And it can go badly or it can go really well. And what happens is, it's like a blueprint. It's like hardwired into our brain. And from there, what happens is we build a belief system. So we build a belief system about a person, an organization, a restaurant. And once we have a belief system that's established, it's very difficult, if not impossible, to change. And in the book, I talk about it. This is not about the COVID vaccine, but about vaccines for children. Is there's all this debate about vaccination, right? And once you have established belief system, if you believe that vaccinations cause autism, then for a campaign to come out that says they don't, get your children vaccinated, is not going to change anyone's mind, right? Because you're not going to change that established belief system. What they did, actually, that's what the marketing people did for the government, is they went forward with this message, get your vaccinations, they don't cause autism. But again, they didn't change anyone's mind. Instead, they started telling the stories where children didn't have vaccinations, what happened. And that's like a scarier, more immediate reality. So they built a new belief system. All this to say, when we're onboarding people, how difficult it can be to change their mind about your business once they've had those initial experiences. And we might talk about it a little later, and I don't know if you want to talk about it now, but that's where pre-boarding is so incredibly important.
Yeah, and it's a little bit about the brand promise, and probably also lends itself to the corporate culture ultimately. Because I can't remember how many times, I've been working for myself for, something like 15 years. So I haven't had an onboarding experience. At the same time, how many times have people gone into an organization as a new employee and they're sitting at their desk kind of like,
yeah,
waiting for someone. Oh, we need to get you a phone. Oh, we need to get you hooked up. Oh, we need to. And why not take that opportunity to educate, empower, introduce, because I've researched you and because you're my friend. That first experience of like, let's have an agenda for that person on the first day and so forth. So I think that, instead of just having someone sort of sit and feel awkward and weird that first day, why not have it have the setup there so that first imprint, that first impression is one where someone feels welcomed.
Right. Feels welcome, feels excited about the business that they've joined. Sending them, we were talking today, I was on another session about onboarding today, and we were talking about like sending them a gift box if they're not coming into the office, even before they start, right? Like it's so awful for people because like when they have their meetings and they're on virtual calls and everybody has their mug from their company, right? Then they don't have one. And just so you know, if I had a Punch Media mug, I could.
Maybe I should get you one of those.
Yeah. But anyway, the point being that they feel part of the organization when they have these little symbols, right? And that can have so much power over how they feel about whether they're part of the organization or not, because you're always going to spend a little while wondering whether you're fitting in or whether it's the right organization for you, right?
Right. And so are some people, do they sort of need to get up to speed? How do they fit within sort of the cog of the corporate wheel and so forth? So I think those things certainly ladder up, and it gets someone, as I said, to feel welcomed and so forth. So why did you decide to focus on this onboarding experience with First 30? You mentioned like when I was a guest, I don't know, speaker. What am I considered in one of your guest instructors in your program?
Oh, yes. You guest instructor. Yeah, you're an expert. Yeah.
So that was really about, as people were transitioning out of the corporate environment and helping to nurture them through the process of job loss. And most of us have experienced at least maybe once in our life having to go through that process and how challenging that can be. And so you've provided a lot of inspiration, motivation, education through that process with First 30. That was the initial vision for First 30, and now
Right.
you've moved on to the onboarding experience. So tell me, why did you guys decide to go that route?
To do that. Yeah. So I mean, I wrote the book. I really love what outplacement has to offer when it's offered well. I felt very strongly that I could do it like the best of anybody. So
I know,
but
it's amazing. Because
oh,
I've
thanks.
seen it, I've gone through it, and I'm not just blowing smoke. It's a really
Yeah.
good program.
Well, and you're part of it, so I
Yeah.
appreciate that a lot. But so I was really excited about that. But here's the thing. It's not like the sexiest area of business to be in, right? Because when clients work with you, they don't typically want anyone to know that you're working together. So you don't get the testimonials. It's very hard to build a business like that very successfully and be overt about it and posting on LinkedIn. And you would know about layoffs. Like nobody wants to like your stuff when you do that, right?
When you've been laid off and you're going through, yeah, that transition for sure.
Yeah, so I felt very strongly, and I always started First 30 knowing it could mean anything, First 30 of something, right? And I had real passion for developing a program for new Canadians, and I'm still planning to do that one day. I don't want it to be cost the user anything to use, but I'd really like to build a sponsored program for new Canadians coming here to help them get a great start in Canada and give them all the, like, a lot of the same resources we do in the outplacement, but geared towards an audience that's coming to Canada, because I know how much people who move here struggle to find their first job. So when I thought, wow, like onboarding, everyone complains about onboarding, and we have this great platform that has been proven to work, and it's one of these kinds of platforms where you could load content onto it. You do it module by module, 30 days, right? 1 through 30. And you can put all of the content that a company has together into one platform. All your acronym lists, all your org charts, all your videos about your company, anything you want. And we help design it. And I thought, wow, wouldn't that make a difference to have this little kind of almost like a digital friend when you're onboarding, so that you can, it's just a support for the manager, because the people manager is often really busy doing other things, and you don't want people twiddling your thumbs. Maybe they don't have a computer, but if they have their phone, they can then do the program on their phone, right? It's all mobile friendly, so that they can learn about the business. They can access their training for safety, for their harassment training, all of these things through a platform, and it's consistent, right? So that everybody's getting that same experience, and you know that they're taking all the training that they should be taking early on. So it works in many different ways. So I was super excited about it. And then I met Sherry, and she's an HR expert. I have some expertise, but she's the real brains behind, the content. So I knew that she could develop the content with HR leaders and their teams, or employers and their teams. And then I could take that and turn it into a platform. And so that was really exciting. It was really when Sherry came into the picture that a lot got worked out.
I love this so much because, as you know, I work with organizations, and typically it's the marketing people that I work with to help turn their employees into brand ambassadors by leveraging channels like LinkedIn. So for me, every employee is a potential brand ambassador, whether
Yeah.
they're posting things on LinkedIn or they're just going out into the world and saying, I am now working for this organization. You know,
Yeah.
that again is one of those imprints. Instead of having,
Yeah.
I work at blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
They've been really excited I'm so excited to be starting my new job at blah, blah, blah. And you wouldn't believe the welcoming that I got at,
I know.
right? So
Yeah.
I just think that that's such a great way to motivate and inspire people to really love what they're doing and be
I
excited.
have a funny story for you, and I know it's really awful. Like I've worked for some great companies who had really, really good onboarding experiences, and I do remember those. Like, you remember the little things that they did. But I also started with a company, and they gave me like flowers were sitting on my desk, which I thought was super nice, but the flowers were like half dead. And I was like, oh, and it was a really strange feeling for me, because I was like, oh, that's like kind of a nice thought, but then it was like, I thought it was very strange that they were so clearly like wilting and dying. And I couldn't ever get that out of my head. Anyway, it didn't work out there. And,
Oh,
I felt like that was one of the first signs that I wasn't going to fit with the organization. Yeah, it didn't work very well, to be honest. Yeah.
that's wild. No,
Yeah.
most of my experiences have sort of been waiting for technology first day. It's just sort of sitting there and feeling awkward and weird and how do
Yeah.
I get to speed and not knowing who to talk to about certain things or not, and kind of just sort of feeling like the new kid at school of kind of going like, okay, so and just feeling all weird. And almost everybody feels that way.
Well, that's why we recommend a buddy. So what we recommend to our clients is that they have a person in the workplace who is not necessarily on that person's team, who would be their peer, who will call them a week before they start and ask them if they have any questions, and like ask them like, do you know what time that we start? Are you do you have a copy of our dress code? All those like awkward things that you don't want to ask your manager, right? Like, I know I have kids, right? When I was starting new jobs, like I needed to be out at a certain time, but it seems strange to say to an interview, like, am I really going to be out of here by 5 o'clock every day? Because like I have to be, right? But your buddy is there to answer all your questions, to help you with the logistics, help you prepare. And then they can meet you the first day when you start. And that's how I know that I used to set it up within my teams when I worked in the corporate world. And it's such a great way. It actually empowers the buddy too, right?
Yeah, I love that. I love that idea. My other friend Amy Riddell, who we went to high school together. We say that all the time. Go Lancers!
Yeah.
So one of the things I love about what Amy does at her conferences, and she works with administrative professionals, project managers, business analysts, and those big conferences that she does, is she's almost the convener. And
Right.
oftentimes she's at the front and she says to, if you don't know, like Amy, you haven't met anybody here, let me introduce you to so-and-so. And so I love this idea of a buddy system. And obviously
Yeah.
Amy loves it too.
Yeah, I love it too. Yeah.
These other people that can sort of like help onboard those people. And I love that idea because it that's always so awkward.
Yeah, it can be. Where the first technology was the phone at the end. Oh my gosh, the end of week 2. Wow, that's so awful. Yeah, I hear these stories all the time about people sitting there like, and what do you do at your desk? So what I actually suggest to individuals, this might sound strange, but you can ask, if you had a buddy, you could ask them, could you bring in your personal computer? Because at least if you're there, you can like look busy. I know, because the worst thing is when you have a new employee, even if they don't have a computer, but if there's something about being hunched over a phone that is very different than being on a computer, even if it's your personal computer, right?
Yeah,
It leaves a different impression. So as an employer, I think it's our responsibility to set people up for success when they come in. So like, I would call it like the look busy strategy for your new employee, because it's embarrassing to everyone when they don't look busy, right? So one of the other things that employers can do is set them up with one-to-ones even before they walk in the door and say, here are some of the people on the team. We've set up one-to-one, like 4 one-to-ones with you day one. And you know what I'm talking about? Like then they can go to other teams and say, okay, here's some stakeholders of yours. Why don't you meet with them for 30 minutes so that you have a program? Like that's another good thing to give a new employee, is an actual agenda for their first week. With some spots for them to like, oh my gosh, when you start in a new organization, it can be so, I always said that I was like a smiling bobblehead my first week, and it was so uncomfortable. My cheeks would hurt and I was so self-conscious, right? But if somebody had set something up for me, and actually one of my employers did, which I really appreciated, I came in and kind of tacked onto my wall was here's your agenda for the next 3 days. And I'm like, perfect. That's exactly what I need, right?
Because most people want to hit the ground running. They don't want to sit there not doing anything. So you're
Well,
right.
yeah, and they don't want to leave. And I remember like even giving them articles to read or a book. There's the first 90 days. Give them that book to read. So at least they're doing something while they're sitting at an empty desk if they have, like Stephen, no technology for the first couple of weeks.
I never thought about bringing my own laptop. Like I would never in a million years have thought about bringing that. And that's such a great idea, because even if you really have nothing to do, because even if you're checking because you're like, they haven't given you anything.
Well, I used to ask my employer, do you mind if I just, like, we don't have to send critical documents. I can take those on a USB, but do you mind if I give my colleagues my email address, like my personal email address? Because like I don't, or sometimes you'll have your email set up, but you won't have your computer. So you can get and most platforms will have a web-based solution too. So you can log in that way. But yeah, it is truly awful sitting with no computer, and I know that a lot of employers do understand it. They just don't know how to fix it.
Yeah, because the left hand and the right hand, it's like, oh, we talked to it, or we forgot to tell IT, or we forgot, and then IT is scrambling because they don't have the password or the login and the information. So even if they have a desktop, it's like, okay, so now how do we navigate around this? Where are the folders for everything? Like all of that.
One of those stakeholder interviews, and I think IT is one of the most overlooked departments in every organization. And I actually wrote about in the book, like, go say hi to people when you don't need something from them. When you bring treats into the office, also drop some treats by the support teams, right? So because it's the worst when someone's always talking to you when they need something from you. So one of the meetings that you can set up for a new employee at any level in the organization is to meet with their rep in IT personally, so that they can build an actual relationship, right? Instead of it just being I'll call you when I need you. Sort of, and that would tell me a lot about a company that did that, actually.
And I think for the experience that I've had with usually with like IT professionals, whether they be clients or even family members, typically those are not the most extroverted of people. They're typically pretty introverted anyway. So going and introducing yourself to them is probably a really great idea, because most people are not going to come up and introduce themselves to you unless they're like you and I, who are like, hey, you're new. And so most people would be a little like, they'll look at you and be like, oh, is this person a temp? Like who like, what are they doing here? So,
well, and also because when things are going well, they're virtually ignored. And then when things are going poorly, all eyes are on them, right? And that's a horrible way to, like, that's really, oh my gosh, my dog is running down the stairs. Bounding down the stairs. It's my dog. Do you have a tea for me? So anyway, I just think that it is really nice to make it a point to do those introductions and to make them feel like they're, you care, because they often do really care, and they take a lot of pride in their work. And when things go wrong, they feel terribly. So, yeah.
Well, and the expectations, I remember too from the IT department, is often, as you said, it's not until like everything is the last minute, and then we need it now, we need it yesterday. I mean, I worked in actually that's where I met Adam Smith. Was working, worked at a what was it, .com in the year 2000. And so I just remember always, like, the IT department was always like, well, we just have this one change. We just have this, like, like the web department or the IT department was like, we just have this. Yeah. And meanwhile, like they're like, well, everybody just wants a little thing changed. And so, sort of, again, developing that.
Who are they going to, but actually, I totally see, right. And Bob's commenting here that he does bring coffee and donuts. And I totally believe that, that he's the person that's going to be back there doing that. But I think that it is great to get what you need when you need it, and people. But I think that shouldn't be the why for doing it. I think it should just be because these people are an extension of our teams, and I'm sure that Amy is as a specialist in people who offer administrative support. Again, very much overlooked until something goes wrong, right? And wouldn't it just be great if people just did good things and treated them like a member of the team, even if it's just not like I'm sure that's going to make people feel more compelled to support you in a crunch, but also just so that they feel good and they spread that joy to the rest of the organization, right? Like, happiness is contagious. but so is being unhappy, right? So the more happiness you can generate in an organization, the better.
Well, and I'd also assume that with your onboarding program, there's a lot of things that most people think, well, that was common sense, like bringing a laptop, like maybe having a, as you said, sort of that what did you call it? The
Pre-boarding. Hmm.
pre-boarding
Yeah.
to let people know, like, this is a really good process. Like send an email to your entire team to welcome the new person, which
Yeah.
doesn't usually happen. And but those kinds of things one wouldn't think of unless you have like a standardized process of onboarding. So I
And
think,
one area that I wanted to mention, because you were talking about welcoming a person and having the team welcome them, there are good ways and bad ways to do that with all the best intentions. You have a team of 20 people. I don't think it's a good idea to have 20 people on a Zoom call with this person on their first day. It's incredibly overwhelming. So two things I recommend is, one is have a meeting with 5 team members at a time only with this new person, and have someone who is a dedicated facilitator of that meeting, because then they will make sure it is run. Because what you have when you have a meeting of 6 people, or even if it's 5 people including the new employee, is that you have 4 people that know each other probably pretty well, right? They've worked together, and then you have one person that's on the outside of that. And it's just so easy, again, with all the best intentions, for everyone who knows each other to kind of relate so well together and have their inside jokes. Like, inside jokes should just not happen during this person's onboarding, because an inside joke is exactly what it says it is, right? You don't get it, which means you're on the outside. So psychologically, that is not good for a new employee. And I think that how it's the damage those situations can do are very much overlooked. But again, if you have someone facilitating who's sensitive to that, you also have a smaller number of people. Because what if the person doesn't know how to log on properly and they're late? They're going to be late in front of the whole team, or something embarrassing happens, like somebody walks by the background if they're at home. It's embarrassing, right? And you don't want them to have to live with that and have the exposure to 20 people all at one time. So I just say little bite-sized chunks for someone on their first week in particular, because it's so tiring, right? Meeting people constantly all day, right?
oh yeah, that's a great tip too. And you're right. Like, it just would be, you would think, oh, let's just get them all up to speed, and this would be a really efficient use of time of just having 20 people on board to have a chat with this person. When really, you're right, from the new person's perspective, that's a lot to take on, right off the
Oh yeah, it really is. And anyway, that's one of the things that I always look at, like, what I loved about my corporate life experience, and I'm trying to fix all the things with my business
yeah.
that
Yeah.
I thought, wow, this could be done better.
Yeah, and I think that it's often something, as I said, like, we often overlook that part. We don't necessarily think of it as people walking into a new business, and we certainly don't think of it as hiring managers. Most people
Yeah.
probably don't think about the process and how are we going to get this person up to speed in a way that is, as you said, imprinting in a, as Google will call it, micro moments, in these micro moment ways that are often subconscious. They're not
Right.
necessarily a conscious way of going, oh my gosh, like, this is completely revolutionary the way that they brought me on board. But it
Yeah.
makes a big difference on their experience, 100%.
Well, when I think about it, even when I'm putting slide decks together for presentations, I really think about how do those look, and how is my business and my brand going to be imprinted based on the slides that I'm presenting, because I want to appear progressive, I want to appear polished, I don't want any like pixelated images on my slides. And I think that companies, when they're doing their onboarding, they have to think about all that too. Like, do they want this old, and that's the other thing that happens with businesses a lot, is they have these slide decks that have been around for like 15 years, and we know how much has changed. And then they give them to people who are starting in the organization to review. And what kind of impression is that leaving with this new person, right? That this
Mhm.
company is kind of like, it's not advanced, and where it's just like, do I fit here? It would be my question if I saw that.
Yeah. Yeah. I
Mhm.
think it's a huge opportunity too, as a part of the education process. I remember way back when I was, you probably know, I was at Wedding Bells magazine 2 times, 2 different
Mhm.
iterations. And the first time that I was there, and it was a very intimate family organization at the time. It was owned by Key Publishers, a very small publisher still involved with Toronto Life. But the person who was the publisher, her mom founded Wedding Bells, and backstory was it started off as sort of being a brochure and then grew and grew and grew. So this magazine, and so the publisher had come into the office after having done some pitches, and she said, "I don't know if I've actually pitched the employees the business." And she came in, and I'd been working there for a few weeks, and she came in and she basically pitched us as if she would have a major client, a major international client.
Mhm.
And I remember just sitting that much taller, being like, "Yeah, I work at the best company. Like, I'm so
Yeah.
excited." And I just that was a huge imprint on me because it
Yeah.
made me, I loved working at the magazine. I loved the team that I worked with, but
Yeah.
just even having that experience of educating and empowering, the team itself on, this is how amazing, this is the work that we're doing at a wedding magazine.
Yeah.
But it made me that much more excited to work for the organization because of that experience, and that always stuck with me.
Well, you bring up such a good point. And when we were like, when you think about the people coming into your organization and their managers, we have to remember that not all managers are amazing trainers, right?
Yeah.
And so how do you help? Like, how, if you're in an HR department, how do you work with managers? The other thing we have to remember is that sometimes, and actually someone was just saying this on a panel I was running earlier today, is we have to remember that some managers don't onboard someone new for 4 years, right? Like, just because if you're in an HR department, onboarding is something you talk about, probably fairly regularly, and you know how many employees are coming into the organization, not appreciating that those employees are going to work for all different managers. So you might have that one manager that hasn't had anyone new in a very long time. So how do you support that manager in making sure they're prepared to onboard, and also that they may not be a great trainer? So how do you compensate for that, right?
Yeah.
Because what you're saying is so important. Someone comes in and makes you really excited, but if you have someone that comes in that's not really like an impressive presenter, or fumbling with their words, doesn't really know the content, it's going to be a very negative experience.
Yeah, and then having it as a system, and I'm sure that so anybody who's a brand manager, like that consistent brand presence,
Yeah.
saying, "Oh, there's my kid who's watching online." I don't know how my kid's on here, but he's
That's funny.
speaking of brands. I see the brand right away. Canute. And so just having that consistent brand presence, so that everybody gets the same experience, I think too, is so important. So
Yeah, it is. And that's one of the things that I love about the work that we do, is that we do offer a consistent experience for every new employee starting in an organization. So that because I do think there's a value to that. Now, their experiences are going to be different depending on what team they're in and what's actually happening live. It's not the only part of the onboarding experience, but it is, one part of it. But everything else that's happening around that will be different, of course. But at least you have that one consistent piece for new employees. Yeah,
that
and
maybe
it's also been something that's been worked on, right? Like, so if you have a training program inside of their onboarding platform, that training program would have had a lot of eyes on it, a lot of attention. Especially if we're working on it, it would look amazing and it would be a lot of fun. So then that will mean that you there's a lot less to worry about, and then it's all about the experiences that they have outside of that. Yeah.
and since yours is online too, it's not just a simple, okay, this is it. It's not one and done. It's like someone can come back and revisit those things as well, right?
Correct. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. If there's things you want to, like, you'd be able to download documents with the acronyms on it, or org charts. Well, org charts, you want them to be digitized though, because we know that, as a person who wrote the book about living in a reorg world, we know that org charts changed, the names at least changed a lot. So it's good to have like a link to that, and that they can get the most recent information.
Yeah.
I know when I've gone in organizations and I've been given org charts and like, a third of the people aren't on them anymore. It's kind of like, ooh, really? This isn't that great. Like, because now it just says to me there's a high turnover, right?
Yeah. And that's a little scary.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Yeah.
So, like, other than the things that we have just talked about, we talked about a lot about the onboarding experience. Is there anything else that companies need to know that they need to really focus on? Like, what are the basic steps of an onboard experience?
Well, I think one of the things that companies do miss on is the entire experience from like, when are you starting to make that impression? And I think you were saying earlier, Leslie, about your new employees being brand ambassadors, right? But it's not only your new employees. Think of every single person that's ever applied to your company. And my goodness, I work on the other side of it too, right? So I see the people going through the recruitment process and the disappointments. And one thing that really surprised me, someone told me recently, is there was one large company that was asking for their year of graduation from university. And we know that it's illegal to ask people their age in an interview, but wow, that's a sneaky way to get around that. And I was like, well, that's not a very good impression of that brand, right? Because and it wasn't Rogers, but I used to work at Rogers and they did not do anything like this. But my point is that Rogers is a very big company and probably like the worst company I could bring up right now today, given everything that's going on. However, I always, every single person that applies for that company, you could turn them into a brand ambassador or you could put them off that brand forever based on the way they're treated. Because applying for a job is a very personal experience. It's a very vulnerable experience. And I know that a lot of it has to be automated, but there are ways to automate with empathy, right? And I do think that is where it starts and what companies should be focusing on. And then as soon as that person has signed their agreement, the other thing is honestly, like thinking about it, comp, right? I know that might sound silly to bring up in this conversation, but it is part of your onboarding and recruitment process. Compensation needs to be equalized in organizations. You need to have, you have to pay the people the same for doing the same job, because there's so many problems that employers will face if it's ever realized that someone is not getting paid the same for doing the same job, and they can go back many years and claim for all of the employment dollars they've lost, right? So I think comp is another big one. It says a lot about the company that you're in, that I know that they may not find out right away how equal or not it is. And then it goes from that to the moment they sign to when they start, like, what are you doing with that pre-boarding time? And that is like lost time. Like a lot of people will have 2 weeks off before they start your job. What are you doing to get them excited and thinking? Because they're going to be thinking about their new job, right? And if they don't hear from you for 2 weeks, they're going to be like, ooh, I hope I still have this job because I've quit you know what I mean? Like, and we've all, as people managers, we have all, or as people starting new business, like when we're starting a new company, we've all thought, oh, like, I haven't heard from these people. I actually want, and sorry, as people managers, we might have heard from employees who are about to start, hey, just checking in. Like,
yeah.
Am I still employed here? So there's that time you never want that person to have doubt. So if first of all, they shouldn't even have to email you because you've emailed them, just to keep the conversation going. And then secondly, if they email you, it should be like right away you get back to them, right? Don't let them wait 2 days if they've emailed you. So that's a big part of it. And then sending them pre-boarding documents. Maybe they can sign off, like they don't have to, but maybe they can sign their, benefits documents or policy documents, anything you need them to sign. So that's all done. So they're not sitting like reviewing benefits documents when they get in, right?
Yeah, those threaded books, the booklets, so the human resource booklets that are all legalese and all that other stuff. My frustration, I would love to see, something like that sort of turned into a fun video. The human resources document, the one that I use when I'm doing training, is the Air Force in Australia has a social media policy that has been turned into a fun video that just basically says, don't be an idiot. And like you're you're responsible for the things that you post online, but it's snappy. And it's like, are people going to look at booklet of
No.
legalese, or are they going to watch some cute little videos about this is what to expect? Like, this is what we're expecting of you. So
Yeah. A cute little video from the team. I was thinking one thing, if they're coming into an office, taking even a little recording on an iPhone of the office itself, getting people to wave to them and welcome them. Like, it's not hard to do now that we have all this technology. Sometimes I think that we forget how to use it for great things like this.
100%. Yeah, 100%. And as Stephen's sort of saying, like, empathy is sort of missed with human resources, even dealing with candidates and even new employees, which is unfortunate, right? So somebody, you've dealt with human resources, you've dealt with your hiring manager, maybe there was a panel, and then all of those people, all of a sudden, then you don't hear or see from them again.
Yeah.
And you start, and it's that awkward, it's everybody's always awkward in the beginning. So.
Oh, thanks, Bob. My new explainer, First 30 explainer video. You can find it on our website. It's at first30.com. Oh, sorry, first30ready.com. My God, I forgot my own website name.
Speaking of videos, right? Yeah.
So yeah, there's an explainer video on our onboarding, which
Bob gets it.
Yeah. But I was gonna say that I was just reading a book called You Have More Influence Than You Think. And I'm embarrassed. I actually just posted about it on LinkedIn today.
Okay.
And it's the author, I believe she's actually Canadian as well. She teaches out of the US now. But anyway, this book talks about empathy and how to develop empathy. And the one way to do it is not to put yourself in the other person's position, because that's impossible for you to do, because you're going to be thinking of yourself as them, but rather be a third person. Imagine yourself as a third person looking in on the situation and ask yourself, how might they be feeling? And when it comes to onboarding, rather than putting yourself in the position of someone walking through the front door of your organization or logging in for the first time, really think about it from a third person perspective, looking in on the situation, and say to yourself, oh, how would this person be thinking? And that might give you some clues as to how to effectively welcome them so that they feel like they're great leading up to and on their first day with your organization. But also thinking about those people we talked about who are not hearing from their employer that they've applied to or had an interview with. There's just like they're ghosted. That's awful. Or if they just get this very like stock email back, there's ways to make those emails, again, even though they're automated, more empathetic.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. Like, make people, like, I think one of the saddest part about technology is that it has taken the human aspect out of things. And, even the word social media has the word social built right into it. Yeah. But oftentimes when we're messaging people, we forget that there's another human being on the other side of the computer, of the email, and like, it's just that reframe that sometimes we need to remember, that when we're sending out things, that there's another human being at the end of the, wide. And so
the other important thing, you made me think of it just now, Leslie, is checking in, right? And when we build the First 30 program, we have check-ins built into it. So the new employee knows to check in with their manager, and their manager has like a guide about how to use the program, so they know to check in with their employee. So checking in is really important as the person's going through this journey. And we're First 30, right? And we focus on the first 30 days. But I would say that the entire onboarding and orientation process go well beyond that. And we should continue. It's not over yet. They'll have their training and everything done. Then they can always look back on that. But then it becomes the organization's responsibility to make sure that they're, and that's where things like pulse surveys for new employees, doing that employee engagement work, can be incredibly beneficial for businesses, because losing employees costs a lot of money. And if you're one of those companies that's losing a lot of employees in your first 18 months, then that's because that could be very much down to your onboarding processes.
Yeah. And also keeping in touch. It's like any kind of relationship, right? Are you ready to then nurture the relationship when you know that they're on their way out?
Yeah.
And I have always found that I'm willing to stick it out. Not stick it out, but I never wanted to leave a company that I loved working at.
Yeah.
wants to leave. It's always about that, is your manager, blah, blah, blah. But it's like, if that corporate culture is inclusive, you feel welcomed, like I remember crying when I left Wedding Bells, like literally crying. I was like, I
Yeah.
love you so much. And I left, and that's a whole other backstory, but I left because of the .com and looking for opportunities and other stuff. But
Yeah.
then I went back to Wedding Bells years
Yeah.
later, right? So that, again, I mean, if I didn't have a good experience the first time, and I was working with a different manager and all that other stuff, but if I had a bad experience the first time, I certainly wouldn't have circled back.
Wouldn't have gone back. And there's something really amazing about being able to track back your previous employees, right? Yeah.
That's pretty telling, right?
Well, and also good if you liked them and they liked you and they just left to get new experience or start a business or something and they want to come back. There's so much that they know about your business already. Like, their learning curve is going to be so much shorter. So maybe that's how we should plan onboarding, is think, we want to onboard so well that even if people leave us, they want to come back.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
So navigating in this new normal, right? Is sort of this perhaps going to be a hybrid of on-site and virtual experience. And I know there's definitely a benefit to both sides of those things. So what do you think are going to be the biggest challenges with, like, say, onboarding or outplacement, insofar as like this new hybrid work environment?
Well, there's a lot of talk about not having people in the office, and then not being able to have that, in human interaction, that creativity. So I do think companies are going to have to think a lot more about and I keep using the word digitize, but digitize some of this, right? Like, make it so that you can have those informal conversations through applications that you can put on people's computers, or that you build in informality. We'll have to be very thoughtful and proactive about building informality in, which sounds ridiculous, but it's going to be necessary, because I think companies have to come to the realization that to attract the top talent, you have to have options for them. Like, you can't just force everyone to come in an office 4 or 5 days a week. And, I read a lot of articles about, like, well, then you're not going to get any creativity happening. I mean, you have your own business. I have my own business. I don't have a creativity problem. I don't know about you. But like, I just call people when I need inspiration. I call you, that sometimes we just call and we just have an informal chat, right?
Yeah.
But if you're one of those organizations that's focused more on worrying about whether people are together and creativity, well, you're not going to attract the top talent anyway. So the people that you have in the room are not going to be the most creative or the best people for your business, because you missed out on top talent by not having options for them. So I think that's one huge challenge companies are going to face. And when it comes to building in onboarding solutions, having something that is can offer and I'll do a little plug for First 30, like First 30, where you can have a consistent experience, whether you're in the office or outside of the office. Get to know things that you might not really find out. Like, I know when I was in meetings, I was constantly asking people when I started, like, what does that acronym mean? What is this? What is that term? Right? But if you can give people access to that, then that is going to be definitely a differentiator. Send them things, like, use the mail service and send them like gifts on their first day. Keep them like engaged over the course of time, with continuing to send them swag or tokens of appreciation, right? So finding ways to do those things. But yeah, when it comes, of course, also when employees leave the organization, again, even if they're let go, they could still be a brand ambassador for you. I worked for organizations. I was in market research, and we were often in employee research, and we would get laid off a lot because we're a cost center, right? And I didn't leave organizations upset or angry. I was very happy with the way I was treated and with how they handled it. And I would be happy to recommend those businesses as employers, particularly because they gave me outplacement services. So I think we do have to think about both sides of it. It's like coming in, and leaving.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I do remember when it sort of came to that I've, as a, being self-employed for so many years, having that hybrid experience where I would go into an office for one of my clients, and there is something to be said about us working sort of collaboratively. I was never privy to certain this is pre-pandemic, of course, privy to certain conversations that I would have in the office. And now I guess there's just this new normal of having to keep everybody up to speed. And at the same time, one of my neighbors is incessantly, like all day long, all she does is meetings all day
Oh
long.
my gosh.
I don't know how she does it, quite frankly.
Yeah.
It's constantly, like, every single day. It's like, I've got another meeting, I've got another meeting, and like, so that's all she does all day. Having
Yeah.
said that, because she doesn't have to commute anymore, she's decided to stay on where she was going to retire. And she's decided to stay on in her role because she doesn't have to leave the house. So
Right.
all
Yeah.
of those things have to sort of come into play when we're sort of navigating this new normal.
Well, one thing I love that I've been hearing about is how business clothes are changing.
Yes.
Because now people want to have the elastic waists like they have on there. I don't know why clothing companies didn't do this in the first place. What a revelation. Make clothes comfortable.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And just, as you said, sort of like just the bottom half doesn't have to be all cute, but yeah, comfortable. But yeah, as long as we're looking good from the top up. And
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, it is like, I mean, it sounds silly, but it is just, forget about the commute. That's another huge cost. And I saw this great video. I don't know if anybody else saw it, where there was a cartoon of a guy getting up and going to work and commuting. And the whole time on the split, it was a split screen, and the other screen was him staying at home and working from home. He could sleep longer. He could take his dog for a walk. He could do like a relaxing walk. He could enjoy his coffee. And like, it was just so interesting how different that experience was. And I could absolutely relate to that, having been on both sides of that.
Right.
But we really have to think through all the complexities we add into people's lives. Some people love working from the office, and I do. Some days I do, but not every single day.
Yeah.
And I always say to people, like, I can be amazing to be around, like 1 or 2 days a week. If you only had to spend 1 or 2 days a week with me, you'd think I was fantastic. If you had to spend 5 days a week with me from like 8:30 till 5 in the afternoon, I may just be mediocre at that point, right? No one can maintain for 5 days full time, right?
Yeah.
Full time amazing.
And I think had I had the opportunity when I had worked at Wedding Bells for the second time, had I had the opportunity to do hybrid work, if I could have made calls from home, go and visit certain clients and things like that, I would have stayed on board, because at that point I had moved out of the city. So I was living 10 minutes away.
Yeah.
And so it probably will retain more clients, I would assume, or retain
more employees. Yeah.
If they have that flexibility of being able to sort of come and go, and have both experiences. Because to your point, I'm sort of an ambivert. So like you, I like being.
Oh my gosh, you can't say that. I just sent out oh, you saw that? Did you see my mail out today?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I didn't read it. I didn't read it.
Oh yeah, I think now you've just revealed to me that you're
I totally am an ambivert.
Well, update next week from Leslie Hughes on ambiverts. Everybody keep that.
Yeah, only because I find I do get it. I do, and I didn't read all of it, so I hope it's not a negative thing about saying that.
No, that's okay. That's okay.
Because I do love getting out. I love seeing people. This pandemic has been hard for me from a mental health perspective of just being isolated. But I also love to not go out, and I love to stay. I'm the same person. Like, even I think a lot of extroverts are like, I don't want to go. I don't want to get up. I don't want to get out. But when I'm there, I'm happy.
It's normal as an extrovert to need time to recharge. And it's funny because we look at, and actually when it comes, again, I'm glad you brought this up, because when it comes to onboarding, understanding whether someone is an introvert or an extrovert, it's not necessarily about how sociable we are. It can affect our sociability, but it's about how do we learn? How do we retain information? How do we like to show up? Do we like to review documents before we have an opinion on them? Or like you or I, can I be put on the spot in a meeting, shown a presentation, and be relied upon to have a point of view immediately, right? And everybody works differently, and there's no wrong or right. I love working with people that are different than me.
Mhm.
just knowing how to show up for them. And it is important in the onboarding process, because a lot of people who are going to start with your organization may want a different kind of experience. They maybe want a quieter, more thoughtful, like reading documents experience, and others might want to get in there and meet everybody and get going right away. So it's actually very helpful to an organization to know what someone's Myers-Briggs profile is before they start. Now, it's difficult you have to be careful how you ask those types of questions, because it can't rely on their employment, but it is really good for an organization to know something like someone's Myers-Briggs profile, so they can help them help understand, because they can show up differently for that person depending.
That's so interesting. And I wonder if there's a way, just as a brainstorming here as we sort of wrap up, is sort of like that self-selection process. Do you prefer to do it this way, or do you prefer to do it that way? That's really interesting from that perspective.
Yeah. And there's so much can be revealed from those Myers-Briggs that will be helpful to understanding how to support anyone, a new employee, a colleague. I know I always work with people better when I know, but I want you to go and read that
I put down.
email. And then I know you're going to call me after you do that. You're going to laugh.
And I'm going to, because I saw when your email came around today, I saw like, are you an introvert or an extrovert? And I guess I've always just considered myself sort of straddling both, more on the extrovert side, quite frankly. So I will be interested to read the rest of the email once I get into it.
You're going to laugh when you read it. Well, thank you so much for having me. And thanks for everybody for joining in your comments. And sorry, I was drinking my tea. I was just so cold. And I had a session right before this. So I've had a few hours where I haven't had a chance to.
Oh, no, it's great, because you probably have gone from one to the next to the next.
Yeah, but it's okay. It's exciting. I am an extrovert, so I do like this stuff. I just needed a tea to keep me going. So I appreciate you letting me do it.
As I said, I've had mine, except I don't want to show you the other side because it's so silly. Mother of the Year.
Mine's I love this mug. It's my favorite.
Big Ben and is it St. Stephen's? St. Stephen's clock. I think
it might be St. Paul's. I can't. Yeah. No, this is Big Ben. It's in the Houses of Parliament.
Yes. Yeah. I thought, because we always say Big Ben is the clock, but I think the tower is Big Ben, or St. Stephen's Tower. But Big Ben.
Big Ben is the clock. Yeah.
Yeah. So as we wrap up, tell everyone again your URL, or how can people reach you?
Yeah. So obviously I'm on LinkedIn. So you can find me most easily there. For First 30, it's first30ready, READY.com. And there's all kinds of resources on there for organizations. They're free, so you can download those. And if you look at our services under onboarding, you'll find our fun new explainer video for our onboarding program. But yeah, and people can always reach out to me. You'll be able to do that on LinkedIn. I think it's the easiest way.
Yeah, it's great to connect with you on LinkedIn, because I see all the time about all the different webinars that you have been hosting, that you've been participating in. And we didn't even get to talk about vaccinations in the workplace. I know that's not your specialty, your expertise. You've partnered up with other experts.
And you know what? I will say something very quickly on that. And I know we're out of time, so I understand if people are leaving. But it's really important for people to feel safe in the workplace, and they need to know that a company has a policy, and definitely making sure that they understand what is required of them before they show up. So if you're going to be asking for their QR code, then definitely they need to know that before they show up, but also understanding how you're keeping your employees safe, and that, what should they do instead of handshake? Right? Like, are you one of those companies that we really advocate for elbow taps, right? Saying those things explicitly and making that part of your pre-boarding, and making sure they have that information before they walk in the first day, will go such a long way in setting them at ease. I mean, I know there's differences of opinion about these things, but we know that 85% of people now in Canada are fully vaccinated, as I understand it. I'm sorry if I have my stats wrong. I'm not. As I understand it. So you're even people that aren't vaccinated, right? Like, they're going to want to know that they are, and especially people who can't be vaccinated, they're going to want to know that they're going into a safe work environment.
Which is such a good point. And I'm sorry we've run out of time to even talk about it. such an important conversation to have, because you're right. It's like, as we're navigating into that new world and getting back into meeting people, that safety feat, that, the psychology and the protocols,
Yeah.
that safety is so important to, on both sides of communicating it and understanding.
Yeah.
So, well, there's never enough time for you and I, my friend.
Aw.
I love you so much.
Aw.
So we will obviously touch base again. And if anybody wants to reach Amy, as I said, on LinkedIn is probably the best place, and first30ready.com is her website. So thank you again,
Thanks.
Amy, and we'll talk to you
Pardon
soon.
me?
I said thanks again, and we'll talk to you.
Oh gosh, my pleasure. Thanks, I always love the opportunity to see you, even if it's on a virtual platform doing a talk.
I know, but we'll connect in person soon, hopefully.
Okay, I hope so too. Have a
Okay.
great day, everybody.
Thanks, everybody. Bye.
Bye.